Okay, so here is the last leg of the America ICMI, and we just got 12 hours left of the ICMI altogether. So this has been quite a journey for me and Vernon. I mean, we've been pretty much doing this all year long, and it's just so exciting to see it come to a completion for us right here. And as you can see, I'm not wearing my button-up shirt. I'm just getting a little bit comfortable because I want to relax and enjoy this moment.
And I would do the same thing, except it's kind of cold here, so I'm still in my jacket thing. So Douglas Wallace says, "Hi guys." Well, hello back to you, Douglas.
Oh, that's why my Hoover app did an update that it still said 12 minutes left on it. That's funny.
Okay. Yeah.
So we look forward to any questions you might have for us, whether they're related to our two sessions that we just did, mine on the future of ICMI, and Vernon's discussion of the inner child. So I'm just going to take a look real quick, see if there's anything on Hoover for us to answer. Nope. So I'm going to ask you, Vernon, a quick question. We're going to first talk, we're going to kind of mesh all of this together about what we talked about just now, but also what brought us to ICMI and what's our overall opinion and thoughts about the future. Yeah. But since our story is a little bit on the intertwined side of how we came to do ICMI this year, I want to ask you first, what led you here? Like, not just because I asked you, but all of the previous things in your life that kind of led you up to this moment.
So I think my philosophical journey really started when I basically had to make a decision. Was I going to read Nietzsche, or was I going to read Ayn Rand? And I basically decided on The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand. This is something I'm going to, so this was something I was going to try to figure out what to borrow in the library at the time. I just needed some kind of introduction to real individualist philosophy at the time, because I had a more casual, like, more passionate version of individualism going on, but I didn't really have the right politics at the time, I think. But yeah, The Fountainhead made like that case of man as the case of man as individual is as its own endpoint, like as opposed to a means to another's end. And that was something that was really life-changing for me. And from that point on, I suppose I kind of developed a better radar for what is more suitable for the individualist outlook versus what is collectivist. And I guess one of the big things I saw an overabundance of collectivism was feminism. And so that was my basis of being critical for it. Now, at the time, maybe I thought it had a point, in history at some point. It's just kind of gone off the rails. This was before before I took the feminism was never not rotten perspective I currently do. But those are some of the early origins there, and I think that's where I kind of got interested in something like the Camille Christina Hoff Sommers area of feminists who were critical of feminism. And not to call myself a feminist at the time, I wasn't, but these were the kind of people I was paying attention to. And in terms of, hey, these are feminists and they're criticizing feminism, so we who are critical of feminism have a point, right? So that was the kind of mindset I had at the time. And I guess moving on, I was more interested in something like what is so-called the intellectual dark web. And I suppose that includes like the Jordan Petersons, the Dave Rubins, and such. And well, I was paying attention to what they, I was trying to go for the, uh, just sit down and just disagree peacefully, where I do disagree, because even in the intellectual dark web, there's got to be stuff I disagree with, which there was, but it got to the point where some of the misandric stuff got really the casual traditionalist misandry that got more obvious to me, and I just kind of snapped and just like, you know what, this is misandric, like I think the men's rights people actually have a point. So I decided to connect with some of those people and well and look at their viewpoints. I think Paul Elam was his channel was the big eye opener for me. And here's the thing about watching Paul Elam speak. He was the one person who really got that individualist part down. I don't even know if he admits it himself. I don't know if that's the word he uses to describe himself. But Paul understood the folly of male self-sacrificial joke of an existence. Basically, just pointing that out, and hoping for something better for men. And that's so I had something to offer. I felt, and really, I didn't really go out, trying to be a member of the men's rights community or anything. I just had my viewpoints and just started a blog. But the first article I wrote got me into the ICMI20 somehow. I guess it was that good. So I don't know. That's how I kind of ended up here. I didn't even really try that hard. I just found myself in here, and then and like you said, Chris, you asked me to help you out with ICMI21, and here I am.
Well, let me ask you about that. Because to be fair, we didn't even know each other.
No, not really.
And as I will explain that, Mike asked me to pick a list of co-creators to help me out, and you were the first on my list. What was that like for you, that out of the blue you were called up to help with ICMI by someone that you only had met once?
Well, I really appreciated the sentiment behind your decision. That I can be trusted, I suppose. So I thought I had something to offer for this conference, to be sure, and it was a good time for me to do it. I think it was. I think the time. I think I have confidence enough to do it. I think so. I was glad that I was chosen to do so, and just wanted to be sure I'm held up to that expectation, and I tried to carry through with this in that spirit. I don't know if that answers your question, but
I mean, were you surprised by it?
yeah, I think so. Like,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, I guess I kind of asked, really, me? Why me? At first, but you explained your case, and well, I just wanted to be sure it was well earned, and I guess I kind of geared my mind towards that.
And did you have any sort of opinion of me before that? Because, like I said, we barely knew each other at all.
Well,
So,
we did correspond regarding that magazine, actually. So we had some prior communication. So I know all the stuff you were doing. You did that male privilege card. I knew about that one, and I guess that's the other primary way I knew of you, was because of that magazine you were working on. So, and I agree with your spirit behind doing that magazine. It's like it's something. It's like a timepiece, really. Like I don't know if I'm using that word correctly or not, but it's a reflection of the current era, right? It's a tangible something to kind of take home with you from the moment it happens. And as some of you saw, I got my own copy, and it's good to have in your hand. I'm very tactile, and just having something in my hand is a good feeling, really. And I think it's going to be more, that feeling is going to be more valued the more digital we become, and the more into the digital age we kind of saunter into.
well, the phrase I used specifically was time capsule. And yeah, I honestly feel that way. And a few people have asked me, why not just do a digital magazine? And it's like, you're missing the point. And that's why in the editor's notes, the very beginning of the magazine, I write about how information can be changed. I mean, we talk about 1984, and the whole book was about changing information so the government is never wrong. But one of the best ways to ensure information doesn't change is to write it down or to print it.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying that it's not impossible to change that information, but it's much harder. Versus being on a computer, that's super easy to change.
Right.
So for me, what really led me here and what led me to picking Vernon, well, I've given my story, and especially during my interview, I've given my story about how I came to be. And, I won't really go into all of that. I mean, 8 years old, I saw misandry and gynocentrism, but I just couldn't articulate it. But right then and there, I was red-pilled. 1988, the myth of male power didn't come out until like 1993, and Paul Elam states that that's what got him to be red-pilled before that was even a term. So I was red-pilled before Paul was. Not that I'm keeping track or anything.
I get it, yeah. I guess in my case, did you want to finish your point real quick, Chris? Or?
Well, I was just telling my story about what led me here. But was there something you want to say real quick?
Well, I mean, I guess that kind of what is your red pill moment kind of gets asked a lot in this sphere, to be sure. And yeah, for me, I guess it was in small doses, really. I guess listening to Karen Strawn at first and Paul Elam. I think Karen Strawn came first, but then I kind of discovered Paul Elam also. And well, yeah, it just got stronger and stronger and just seeing more of the sense. So there wasn't one specific moment in terms of the red pill. There was one moment I snapped, but and that was when I saw that Christina Hoff Sommers and her co-host was praising Erin Pitsey as a forgotten feminist, but then proceeding to throw her under the bus for her involvement with A Voice for Men and men's issues in general. And I just got so mad. I wrote them a letter. I'm talking about their podcast and stuff like that. I don't think they might have seen it. I don't know, but they've never responded to it. I think I still have that letter somewhere. But yeah.
Well, and that just kind of jars up some memories for me. And I'm not saying that I was red pilled because I discovered something, but I became red pilled that I just kept noticing it. And I was never popular in high school. I was never popular in school at all. And that gave me a unique perspective of seeing the rest of society. Because when you're popular, you want to stay popular, and you're going to ignore anything that would remove your popularity. But when you have nothing, you get to see people as they actually are. And I saw gynocentrism left and right. And I remembered that, I never really encountered feminism growing up, even in high school. The one time I did, I had friends arguing that society would be better if women were in control. And I was arguing that it doesn't matter if a man or a woman is in control, history would have been history. And, it's not something I quite knew at that time, but when I start looking at history now, I see that there have been plenty of females who were in power, and there was still tragedy, there was still catastrophe, there was still wars and famine and death and pestilence and pesticides. Well, okay, women didn't have anything to do with pesticides, but you know what I'm saying.
I get it.
So, and I remember when I first tried to get into the men's movement, one of the things that had happened around that time was Boko Haram. And so many people were saying, save our girls. And one thing I sort of watched at that time was Queen Latifah's day talk show. Sometimes I'd turn it on and it'd just randomly be there, so I'd watch a few minutes. And she talked about it, and I sent an email to her because it's like, hey, as bad as this is, like a few months ago, there were boys who were burned alive. I never got a response from that.
Of course, yeah.
So, but when I saw Karen Strawn, she really just confirmed what I already knew. You know, there is a lot that I did learn from her, and I'm not saying that I knew everything, but the spirit of what she was talking about is a spirit I already understood. And I knew that I was in the right place. And I used to be in theological debates.
Okay.
Me being an atheist, I used to debate people about God and the Bible and all of that. And I just kind of got bored with it because nothing changed, nothing improved. No one really used the opportunity to expand themselves and grow. It was always just the same conclusions from the start to the end. And it's like, there has to be a better use of my time. And that's why I got it. One reason I got into men's rights is because my debating on this, it would lead to a better world. And at the end of the day, atheists are atheists, Christians are Christians. Nothing's going to change. But within the men's movement, if I keep fighting, we could see equality. And that is a far better use of my time to try to change the world for the better.
Sure.
So, but of course, I was also disabled and I didn't think there was anything I could do. And then I started doing things with the honey badgers. And then, you know, I left the honey badgers because I wanted to do more on my own. I wanted to have, I mean, I would always be under them, and I'm not trying to say there's anything wrong with that, but it's like I felt that there was more I could offer than they wanted from me at the time. So I went on my own, and it was a tough journey, and it was well worth it, but over time I built the confidence that I was capable of doing a lot more. And I often wonder if I had the mindset, the brain, the capacity to do something, what more could I do? And I wonder about that every day.
Exactly.
But I also want to be an inspiration to people that's like, hey, this guy with a barely functioning brain is able to go out there and do something. What's stopping me?
Yeah.
I mean, I have very little money. I have very little capability outside my home, and I'm always trying, and I'm always trying to improve myself. And look at what I've done. You know, I created 2 calendars. I convinced women to send me their pictures, sexy pictures. You know, I did a magazine, and that's still having its growing pains right now, but you know, I don't know. I don't know if we're just going to do 3 issues or if there's going to be more. I'd like to do more. I'd like to build this and grow this and to make it better. Heck, one of my goals is to reduce the price. You know, that there's such a demand for it that we can lower the price to be more affordable.
Exactly.
You know, I got my books. But I think what led me here is just that I did all of that. Because I remember the first time I ever talked to Paul Elam, and it was for his book, Men-Women Relationships. I mean, I knew of Paul Elam prior to that, and I always wanted to talk to him, but it's like, what could I talk to Paul about? You know, it's like, I felt like I would be wasting his time if I said, hey, Paul, how you doing? You want to talk sometime? Get out of here.
Right. I know exactly what you mean. By the way, we got some questions.
Well, okay, but let me finish, please.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I do see the questions.
All right, yeah.
But, you know, I saw an opportunity to reach out to him, and like his ebook was so poorly put together. Like I was embarrassed for him. So I emailed him and said, hey, I can improve upon your design. And I'll do it for free, because that was my opportunity to get to know Paul and for Paul to get to know me. And, it's funny, a lot of people tell me, oh, well, if you want to publish book in the movement, you need to get Mike Buchanan to publish your book. And, I've looked at Mike Buchanan's website, and I even emailed him a few times before I ever actually got to know him. And it's like, there's nothing Mike can do for me that I can't do for myself. But some people are so adamant. I'm like, well, no, I can take care of it myself. I'm like, no, you have to use Mike. Well, the thing is that Mike is so busy, he didn't have time for me. So it's like, again, we have the same skill sets. So, I mean, there's really no advantage in using Mike when I can do it just the same. And all my books are self-published. I also have a publishing company, which I asked Mike if it was okay if I did it. And not only did he say yes, he says, I hope you're more successful than me. And one of my big pushes for next year is to encourage people to hire me as a publisher, because not only will I help you get your book out there, I will teach you what you need to know to get yourself out there. I can't guarantee you success, but I can give you the tools so that if you become successful, you know what to do with that success. You need to know how to advertise yourself. You need to know how to get your information out there, like a press kit. And those are the kind of things I can teach you. I can also help you look at your book and tell you how to improve upon it. But like I said, it was like doing all of that. And then I met Mike through Regarding Men. I, again, talked to him a few times before that, but that's when we really got to talking. I don't know what process it was that he decided that he wanted to use me for ICMI. I don't know if someone recommended him to me. I don't know if he formed an opinion, but once he asked, I was there, and he's like, I need you to come up with a list of people to be your co-host. And I did have a list, and I won't say who's on that list because I don't want any hurt feelings, but Vernon was on the top. And for the life of me, I cannot tell you why Vernon was on the top of the list. I barely knew him. But it was like, there was a video that we did. It was me, Elizabeth, Natty, Vernon.
There's a lot of people.
Was there too. There's like a couple of people there, and that's when I first really met him. And just, I think it's because he's a programmer and he's a very stoic person. I don't know. He just kind of, because programmers in the past, they're always very dedicated to what they do. They're very abstract. They kind of have to be a programmer, because a lot of what programming is trying to figure out how to do something no one else has ever done before. And that was the kind of person I wanted with me doing this. And I made the offer, and then just really hit it off.
Yeah.
So, okay, that's my story. I'm done.
That's okay, yeah. So I'd like to, if I know that the question is addressing a certain person, the other person should probably ask this. So that's why I'm asking Douglas's following question, because I believe it is more addressed to Chris than myself. I have the impression that you want the next ICMI to be in person, yet unless you run 2 meeting rooms at the same time, there's no way you could have as large an event as this year's. Do you think there's a place for digital aspect to future ICMIs? If there is, would this weaken attendance at physical ICMI too much?
I don't think so. I think that while the next year we're not capable of doing an in-person ICMI event, as much as I wanted to, as close as I was to signing that dotted line, it just wasn't in the cards. But let's skip to 2023, and we'll potentially have 2 ICMI events that year. Will there be room for a digital one? And I say yes. One, there's a possibility of doing a hybrid event, of doing both an in-person and digital conference at the same time. Although the logistics with that is nightmarish. It's possible, and we might be able to do it, but there's certainly the possibility of having 3 events in a year. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say what other country is going to be doing ICMI or not. I can tell you that I'm pushing for it later in the year, but we could also have one for people who weren't able to attend ICMI because those tickets are expensive, travel is expensive, but maybe they want to see some aspect of the event that they wish they were there to see. Well, we could easily put that into a digital release. And while the tickets will be a lot less and doesn't require any travel, they get at least to understand what was seen at that ICMI. And we can even delay releasing it on YouTube for that conference. It's an idea. I don't know if that's what we're going to do, but having digital along with in-person is just another tool set. It's like a Swiss Army knife. We just discovered that there's another knife that we can use that has a specific purpose, doesn't replace the big knife we use for in-person ICMI, but I'm sure we could find a use for that smaller knife. So I'm going to ask the next question because I think it's for Vernon here. Am I correct in thinking that the pure, am I saying that right? Pure?
The way I've heard James Hillman pronounce it is puer.
Puer. Am I correct in thinking that the puer, I'm not going to do that, archetype is often viewed as being immature? How can males who are single cultivate their puer in a healthy way? And how can fathers do likewise in themselves and encourage this in their sons?
All right, let's take this one step, each step of the way here. Yes, the puer archetype is vastly, grossly being viewed as immature because remember Tome Lahren basically kind of basically admonishing men as boys because they're supposedly so immature or not. Well, is that really true though? Couldn't they just be enjoying their life and not devoting it to get on your knees gynocentrism, you know? And that's the most easy thing to do. This kind of chivalric horseshit is such a easy thing. It's not a big undertaking because everybody's going to praise you for being that white knight type. And it's really easy to just call it immature because, you know, maturity is defined as servitude towards the abstract of society. It's just it's male disposability as guiding principle and misdefinition as a civilization. Now, let me address how males can cultivate it, single males can cultivate it in a healthy way. Well, so if they're single, they actually kind of have a big opportunity to cultivate it, actually. I'm actually kind of worrying that if somebody is not single, they might have a little bit more difficulty. But if you're single, you're kind of free and you're able to establish everything you want to do without some woman kind of leering over you and kind of scrutinizing you. So you get to have the goals you want, you have the hobbies you want. And, you know, if you become not single somewhere down the line, you're already established. You're not in a position where you have to kind of ask permission to a woman whether you can indulge in this kind of hobby or not, because you're already doing it. And, you know, now women, you're not going to let a woman tell you that, you know, that's out of the question. You're in a position to tell them to kind of screw off if, you know, if they're not the kind of person that would suit their kind of needs, you know. So you're in a better position to fail their shit test and be totally okay with that and grow as a person. And if you do end up in a relationship, they'll love you for having pursued your puer in that way. Because like I said in my presentation, the puer is magnetic. Look at Elvis Presley. He was like King Puer during his time, and girls were nuts about him. Like, girls killed themselves when they found out he died. I mean, it's not that women actually hate puer men. They just don't know how to treat it, because they kind of bring in these anti-puer kind of attitudes towards the puer men, and because they think that, because that's all they know, right? They don't know how to go about loving a puer. They do, but they don't really know the particulars of it. But I know that's kind of a bit of a tangent from that second question, but to kind of bring ourselves back to that, just know your interests and know what you've always loved, and just go for it. And like I said, being single is not an obstacle; it's an opportunity. So the final part of that question: how can fathers do likewise? Well, I would basically say, I would give the same advice as with the singles, because we're talking about someone who might want to be a father, and eventually will be. Let's assume that. So if they know what they want in their life, like if they know their craft and their, not even just career, but in their kind of personal life, if they build models or something like that, plastic models for instance, or if they have like a vast collection of anything, like maybe music, like a music collection or something like that, or a record collection, that is something to show off to your sons and daughters. And it's a way of giving them an example. It's a way of kind of showing that your dad is this awesome guy who just knows how to have fun. And this is kind of, and contrary to like the do whatever father says kind of 1950s sort of kind of father knows best sort of thing, that I personally don't think we should go back to. I think there's rose-colored glasses that think we should go back there, and that could, because a father without a puer is as a progenitor of a dysfunctional family. I think in any dysfunctional family, they've tried to do something very wrong. I think they've sacrificed themselves and kind of turned parenthood into their dreadful duty. And I don't think it's existentially good for a child to know that they're just along for a ride in somebody's dreadful duty. And I hope that answered your question there, Carl.
You mind if I take a stab at that question?
Yeah, of course.
Well, first off, yeah, it's definitely seen as immature. But I think as far as what you were talking about, girls not used to it, the thing is, for girls growing up, they're always wanting to be older. They want to be older, have that freedom. They mature faster than boys, and that's just a fact of life. Saying it doesn't take away from boys, it's just biology. So by the time a girl is 16, she's generally as mature as an 18-year-old, but then she also kind of stops at that point. So her drive to be an independent person and to be with a good guy and to live that life, that's really what her motivations are. And so she's always looking at older men as they're more mature men make money. So that's what I want. But then you meet a man who still plays Battletech, a mech warrior, like all the books behind me. And I'm an obsessed fan of it.
Which we can't see the books right now because,
yeah, I have a Snow Raven tattoo. So I think this is ultimately a good thing because, and even look at it as the respect of going out and playing sports. Technically, playing sports is staying connected to your adolescence. Because when you become an adult, you have to go and get a real job. And just like playing in company softball games or doing anything like that, that's technically immature, but that's acceptable because it can be manly to hit the winning home run at a game. but then men still go around playing basketball, shooting hoops. They'll go to a car, fixing a car. And I think those are elements of getting in touch with their younger selves, because as their younger selves, these were things they wanted to do. I think it's an aspect of it. It's more like an advanced form of it. It's adulting, but it's just like, hey, I want to get back and have fun again. Because in my ordinary day-to-day life, I can't do that. But, I have seen an increase of adults playing board games. That's not considered immature, even though when I was growing up, board games were seen as something children do. And yet now I see I go into a game shop, I see men and women playing board games.
Right.
But I will also say one other thing, because I know you want to move on. Something that Warren Farrell talks about, because the question was, what can fathers do? And the answer is simple: roughhousing. Because while roughhousing is a good activity for children to learn about delayed gratification and about the rules of play and how to use their strength and how to be gentle and how to be empathetic, it's also beneficial for fathers to play like they were kids. And that's getting in touch with their inner child. So there's a double effect that happens with roughhousing. Like, as much as I hate my stepfather, he still roughhoused with us, and we'd be doing wrestling like on TV. He'd put us in headlocks, and then he'd lift us up and do things like that. And that was a way for him to connect to his childhood while also giving me the opportunity to roughhouse and learn from that.
Yeah, that's a definitely good point there. Right. Okay, so Douglas has another question. How do you define equality? Is equality between the sexes more important than meeting the typical needs of each sex? Say, he clarifies egalitarianism versus essentialism.
That's a tough question to ask. And for me, and go ahead and leave that question up for a moment so I can refer back to it. As with anything, you ask me a question, I'm going to say it's complicated, because I look at things in a very complex way. But I will say that it's not about equality, it's about equity. And, I use the example of the 3 people trying to watch a baseball game. If we each give them one box to look over the fence, will benefit 2 people, but not really help the 3rd person. But if we give the no boxes to the tall guy, 1 box to his oldest child and 2 boxes to his youngest child, they all 3 get to see the experience of seeing the game, without paying for it, But so to me, it's more about equity than it is about equality, or rather the equality of opportunity, not equality of, what's the other thing? Sorry, my mind is starting to go. So outcome. And when a lot of people talk about equality, they're talking about outcome. That, hey, this person got hired for the job and they're a guy, well, I'm a female, I should have gotten hired, because that's what equality, and they discriminated against me because I'm a woman. Or they wanted, that person had more of what they were looking for than you. It may not even been related to sex, but it's, oh, well, I'm a woman, I should have gotten the job, they must be sexist. No. You both had the opportunity to go there, to present your case as to why you should have gotten hired, and they made a decision. Because when we see it as a woman gets hired because they want to fill out some sort of affirmative action, some sort of quota, and we say, hey, you should have hired the male, it's like, oh, no, this is equality because she got hired. Again, it's equality of outcome that they want, or rather, they just want women to always succeed over men. Egalitarianism is important for me, though. And one of the most important things about egalitarianism is it's not about who do we focus on more? Do we focus more on women or men, blacks and whites, transgendered and everyone else? Equality is equality. And, that's why when that female Marine who was at the Marine boot camp training got fired from her job or reassigned because she told women that they were responsible for their choices, I made a petition on change.org. And I hate change.org. I don't want to give them my information, but I did it because she was discriminated against. It's like, hey, you didn't toe the line while also treating the females like they were children. So we're going to punish you. Whether it's a man or a woman who gets into trouble, I'm going to be there to help. I do put more of my focus on men, though, because they are being left behind. But for me, is equality between the sexes more important than meeting the typical needs of each sex? My answer is yes to that, because a little from column A, a little from column B, but it goes back to equity. Sometimes women need a little bit more. Sometimes men need a little bit more, but we can't just be, oh, we only need to focus one or the other, because that's how we got into this problem in the first place. Because men and women were being mistreated in society, but women stood up and said, we're getting treated horribly, give us everything we want. And eventually they got everything they want while leaving men behind. Because we played this game of, oh, well, they should have more because they're women. We focus more on them. Men and women have different needs. They have different discriminations against them. And while right now women are out on top, when we go into a world that's fully egalitarian, we've got to recognize that, sometimes women need free tampons. And sometimes men need free condoms. I mean, it's like apples and oranges there, but you know what? It sometimes helps society. I don't know if I answered that correctly. I'm going to give up while I'm ahead. So let's ask another question from Carl Palmer. Or do you want to try to answer that question from Douglas Wallace?
Well, here's what I'll say regarding the whole equality thing. I think equality is the most important at the ground zero, where each person is a human individual. And that is that level of equality that I believe in. And where they go from there and how they kind of end up is mostly up to them, all things being normal. So that is the primary way by which I see value in egalitarianism. I used to be kind of hard on egalitarians because I kind of accused them of being like a variant of collectivism, and that they want everybody to just be the same and kind of have like a tribe, a cut out of the tribal mold and stuff like that. And some egalitarians kind of go that path, but I don't see it that way anymore. I kind of cut them a little bit more slack. And on that basis, I generally know what people mean, especially in our movement when it comes to equality. So those are my 3 cents on that one. So.
Well, I'm an egalitarian, so do you hate me?
Yes.
Okay, then. Carl Palmer. So, are there ways males can indulge their affair in unhealthy ways?
If you don't stop mispronouncing it, I'm going to destroy you. All right. So, yes, in short, there are ways that males can indulge their puer in unhealthy ways, but that I consider to be like a reaction of having no puer before. Like, if somebody kind of goes about without much kind of affinity for a game, but then discover how a game is that good, they might develop a bit of an addictive personality and kind of do it in inappropriate moments, like on the job or something like that. And there's also self-destructive ways of indulging one's puer, like I suppose hard drugs come to mind, as well as irresponsible activities that can harm self and others. There could be unprotected sex, of course, and just physical activities that's more dangerous than you would kind of normally take the risk for, I suppose. But again, I see that as more of a reaction of the poor of the Senex. The counterpart of the Puer is the Senex. In case nobody saw the video before, for those who haven't seen the video, and it's like this arrives from a conflict between those two archetypes, which are shadows of each other. The Senex is the Puer shadow. The Puer is the Senex's shadow. So it's kind of this Jungian idea of the shadow of the self, of course, and that leads to unsynchronized behavior that doesn't really know the self as well as it should. It's not in harmony with the self, and it could lead into self-destructive ways of overindulgence. Now, I do want to make one remark about who measures overindulgence. There may be such a thing as playing too much video games, like neglecting your health or your job or agreements you made with other people. But then again, if you don't really like video games so much, playing 2 hours straight of video games can count as an addiction to some. I think it's kind of, so there's a lot of subjectivity there. But so I think a good way to actually recognize whether a certain indulgence, I'm not anti-indulgence, by the way, that a certain indulgence kind of goes too far. We need to be better equipped to gauge how much of it we have a place for in our lives, how much of it is just fine in terms of video games and our music and the sex and everything like that, which none of those things I'm against, in principle. So, but I think bad indulgence, self-destructive indulgence, is a reaction to the Senex run amok, that old man archetype. That's the order and the authority sort of an idea. Kind of, if you're feeling like you're scrutinized for doing one thing, like doing any given thing that's socially taboo, you feel like you might want to go deeper into the underground and do like a darker manifestation of that. So what I'm advocating for is a reconciliation of Senex and Puer, and that means recognizing that the Puer does fine things in his passionate indulgence, and the Senex, it's not about one against the other. It's about a merger between the two. So once again, I hope I answered that question well.
I'd like to give my thoughts on it.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think about the character Pierce Hawthorne from Community, and he would be an example of an unhealthy, I don't know how to pronounce this word. It takes me a while to pronounce new words. So Pierre? All
right, it's Puer, but
Puer.
Yeah, there you go. See, you did it.
Poor air. Okay, so I've seen these kind of people in my lifetime. They're kind of the min-maxers. They're kind of the cheaters. They're kind of, let me put everyone down so I can feel better about myself. Let me figure out the exact way to play the game perfectly so I can always be the winner. Competition is perhaps one of the most healthy things that we males can do, with the exception of co-opetition, that we can cooperate with the team and still compete against someone else, but it still falls under the umbrella of competition. But then there are some people who want to win so badly and to be so popular and to make everyone else around them feel so bad in the process, they end up making the game no longer fun. And I think that's a misuse of the Pierre being unhealthy. Would you agree with that, Vernon?
I think so. It's like, the way I define it in my talk is that well, I didn't use this word in the talk, but they might want to be like a try hard or something like that. And it's kind of like a weird version of the Senex kind of masquerading as puer. It's like um you have to be the one that establishes the order. And the order of things is that I win all the time. So it takes the fun out of the game that otherwise a puer might really, really need. It's like puer knows when to lose and how to win. But what the guy you're describing, this kind of try hard, is someone who would be distressed at the idea of losing and would then call upon like the big daddies of the Senex to kind of impose like one example I gave was like you know how some parents can't stand the idea of their child losing in their sport, so they say that the referee like rigged the game, or like they have something against, you know, because my child would never lose, right? No, my child is perfect. So that's the kind of way I interpret that.
So Vernon, what has been your overall impression with this year's ICMI?
I think we were kind of caught by a bit of a surprise, but it turned out great anyway. Because this was kind of, well, let's admit it was a tad short notice, wasn't it? So, you know, we were kind of like holding back a lot because we were kind of afraid of the crazies, and we were just afraid that if we knew what people were up to, we'll have the digital equivalent of the fire alarms and the smear campaigns and everything. But so I guess people were kind of given a bit of a surprise as to what we had in store. So, but despite that, I think people have been giving great feedback to this event and to this application, and the way I see the community is pretty bustling. Actually, I can see that for sure. Everybody's finding new people to interact, new people to subscribe. In terms of that community, I think it's been a pretty big success, and I think people are really enjoying it. They're kind of sad that they don't necessarily always have the time to go to the next one because they had to grab some food or to get some shut eye or something. So, I mean, I like that you know, they're wanting more in a given time, and and hopefully we can accommodate that by doing our release of the live Q and A's after the fact that they've done. But yeah, I think I have a good impression of how things have gone.
Would you like me to also answer that question?
I think so. I usually kind of help yourself, so.
I'm giving you the opportunity to ask me, bitch. I think that this has been more successful than I thought it would be because this is breaking new ground or trying something different. Last year, we did everything on YouTube, and it's kind of hard to say whether or not that was successful because technically we can kind of look at who viewed what, but I think a lot of people just kind of clicked on who they wanted to see and didn't necessarily see everyone. We're talking about 120 speakers, you know, and that's it's. I mean, I tried watching all of them, and I think there were a couple I missed, but it's just like it was almost too much. So this year we wanted to try to do something that was a little bit more engaging because that was something we also missed last year was well, people tell me one of the best part about ICMIs of the past was getting to meet people. So I'm hoping people actually got to meet each other here, but I think this is just a learning opportunity where we are seeing firsthand what works and what doesn't work. We had a lot of ideas, and not all of them we could do because we weren't really sure how they would work out. because the last thing we want to do is overload the attendees, but we also want to give attendees something of substance. For me, ICMI is basically like the World Series of the men's movement. Everything that we've done comes to a culmination whenever we do one of these. And whether they're once every 2 years or once every year, which I think we're trying to push for once every year somewhere in the world. And we're going to learn a lot of valuable lessons, and we're going to take that with us to do ICMI22 again on Huba, and any future time we do this on Huba. We're going to have an idea of what works. We're going to try new things, but I think that this has been a great success. I wish we had a lot more people in attendance. I'll be honest with that, but we had a very good turnout. It's a lot more than I thought it would be, because I thought a lot of people would be a little uncertain, not sure if they want to try it, but I hope the rest of you had a good time. And I ask you to let everyone know how great this is, because not only can they still buy tickets for the next month, but when we do this again, I want the community as a whole to really rally us for going out there and doing this again.
One thing I want to add is that the conference really should be about the men just as much as for the attendees as well as showcasing the speakers. So I want the attendees to be themselves as men, if they are men, and basically kind of show that. And that's why in the community section, you will notice that I posted a thread called "Share Your Hobbies," and that's kind of in something that's tied to my own talk about just having something passionate about to devote your energy into. Because as I say in the top part of that thread is that, what are we men if not due to our hobbies, or something like that. I think I'm butchering that, but that's why I invited the men to share who they are and share what they've got going on in their lives as like a real interactive experience. So that's kind of what I wanted to briefly touch upon.
Well, I think misusing of that Pierre that we're talking about is definitely Magic the Gathering. And anyone who plays that is just way too immature. I say really? That owning Magic cards, but I don't play anymore, so that's the caveat right there.
Well, I'll argue against that. If you don't play anymore, you don't have that much of a player going on. Sorry. I'm showing off my cards over there, and this one, well, $27. That one's about $20. Yeah, I don't spend enough money on this hobby at all.
Well, I got stuff, but I don't think I ever really paid more than $10 for a card. Not that I'm judging, but a lot of the valuable cards I got was in random packs that I just bought.
Right.
Or I guess I bought from other people, and as a collection, I think I've spent as much as $100 for a collection. And I'm sure those cards just improved with time. But then I love Battletech and MechWarrior, and I have since I was in high school.
Definitely. We've because I guess the point, one of the points I make is that gynocentric society is going to shame us men for their hobbies. They're going to point at how much money we spend, our hard-earned money we spend on something that's not women or servicing society, sometimes read as women. But yeah, and you can think of any given epithet they can throw at us. We're man children or something like that. And why do we stand for this? It's our life, and it's our own meaning that we found in this thing. And I want to address Cole Palmer's a comment there. So a healthy balance between our career and our hobbies. Well, that's exactly it. In fact, in college, I could have done like a music major or something like that, right? Because I love to perform music and such. But I decided on computer science instead because I knew I had to earn money. And I can do computers well enough, but I went into that major without knowing much about programming. So I kind of turned out to be a C student anyway. But the real skills were learned during my career once I finally found I was able to find some work. But that's the thing that financially fulfills my hobbies, right?
Well, something I'd like to add to that, it was kind of the joke I once heard. I think it was by Brian Mallow. He's a science comedian. And he's like, he's walking one day and he sees a jock with a book on sports statistics. He's like, hey, there's a nerd. Now, that's considered normal, holding a book on sports statistics, but someone holding statistics on how to play a game, that's nerdy. I think one fortunate thing that has happened, because I remember back being a nerd when that wasn't cool, is that nerdom has become a lot more socially acceptable. And to the point that, we have the MCU. And being a comic book nerd back in my day, it's just like, oh, well, you only read just comic books. I don't want to deal with you. To now, knowing about comics is considered a level of coolness. So I think that's kind of helped with the men staying in touch with their inner child, but even women too staying in touch with their inner child, is that these things that were once considered childish and unimportant has become part of the nomenclature.
Exactly. And like I mentioned in my talk, the female counterpart is the puella. And that's like a talk all on its own. But this is the International Conference for Men's Issues, so it wasn't something to be brought up at the time. But I could see myself talking more about it. But there needs to be a little bit more of a study into that on my part as well, because I've been focusing more on the puer first. But some of the things could parallel with each other. So consider what I said on the subject of puer just as applicable to women and their inner girl, as it were, in the capacity that it does.
I will say, though, that one of my greatest strengths throughout my entire life that I picked up from childhood is my imagination. And while my disability has disrupted my imagination a bit, it's what allows me to write. It allows me to be a good activist. It's one of the most powerful things that I have learned, that it allows me to break things apart and analyze them, and it makes me a good storyteller. It makes me a good person to debate. It makes me a good organizer. And even now, I will still play like silly little situations in my head, or pick up a lightsaber and pretend to be like Darth Maul or something. And I have no guilt for that. Hell, I talk out loud when no one's around. And I will proudly admit that I'm not talking to myself, mind you. I'm not crazy, but even doing that's not a bad thing. I kind of just talk out loud or imagine conversations I have with people. I don't answer myself. God, I'm boring. I'd hate to talk to myself. But I am never going to feel guilty for having a childlike imagination, because it is one of the best tools I have at my disposal. And the advantage of holding onto it for so long is I know how to use it in a vast variety of ways. And I think that's the power of the inner child that you speak of. I don't know if that was really the conclusion you drew, but it needs to remain a part of us, because as we grow up into adults, that inner child can evolve to be used in a vast variety of ways you can't even fathom if you don't use it.
So the best way I've kind of been able to kind of encapsulate that idea is that it's the idea of keeping the inner boy intact by ways of kind of taking him along on a journey into your own adulthood. It's like you're carrying, like, imagine that you're carrying the boy version of yourself, like on your shoulder or something like that. And, you're giving him a glimpse of what's to come for him as a child. So that's the best way I've been able to kind of conceptualize this and give myself a sense of a future.